I believe it was the great philosopher Beyonce who said, because if you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it. If you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it. In fact, we're going to put 2 rings on it as well as a belt. And this crafting guide is for more than just the single lady, so don't worry. We're going to go through the actual budget rings, as well as the hopefully endgame RNG craft rings, with which I am still struggling myself, in addition to the belts that you may want to craft. Hopefully, you are able to make them cheaper than I have. There is layers of RNG involved. I'm still experimenting with different crafting methods, but these are the ones that have been successful for me so far. And speaking of some level of success, let me show you what I'm currently holding on to in the game. This is my current version of the build. I've clearly upgraded a couple of things since the latest video, version 2. I'm working on version 3 basically. And I've got vermilion based rings and I've got a Micro-Distillery belt. We're just going to casually ignore the wonderful chest. And we don't have to worry about crafting the amulet because it's unique. So the vermilion bases are not mandatory. You could do coral bases. We'll get to that in just a second. But the mods we're looking for are cast speed, recoup. These are mandatory. Tier 1. A usable suffix, in this case we hit strength, which was very lovely. On the other ring we have rarity, but a resistance would also be great. Chaos, elemental, or maybe even intellect, or dexterity if for some reason you would need that. If you are playing a slightly different version of this build, it could be very well possible. We also have, of course, the life through the unveil with mana regen, and then we also have the non-channeling craft, -7 boosted to -8 due to the life and mana modifier catalyst, which is very important. And you may be wondering what that other prefix is. Well, that's the failed slams of the Crusader Orb. There's a particular Crusader mod, which is really, really good, which gives you healing on hit with spells. But it's like a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 20 to hit it, and I have been unable to hit the damn slams every single time. Or even just like trying to slam the percentage life on like the hunter belt that I've been trying to craft here as well. As you can see, we have 2 usable suffixes in the elemental resistance. Then we have the 1 flask suffix we want, which is reduced flask charges used. Alternatively, you can also use the flask charges gained. And then we also have unveiled increased effect, which is very, very good. On top of some basic crafted life, and the Hunter Slam, giving us tier 1 chaos damage, which is really good. I would have preferred percentage life, but it is what it is. If once you slam that last exalt, that influenced exalt, it really is just in the hands of RNG. And, well, sometimes they giveth, and sometimes they giveth nothing because they're pricks. So, that is what we're going to try to recreate in this crafting guide. So let's start with the budget rings. As always, before starting a brand new craft, always double check your mods and the correct bases. Now, we're going to check a coral ring because that is oftentimes cheaper due to its more readily available drops and whatnot, especially when it comes down to fractures. So it's going to be cheaper to find that fractured than a vermilion ring out of 9 of the 10 times. We're looking for a damage taken recoup as life tier 1 fracture. So we know it's going to be above item level 79. Cast speed doesn't matter because we're circumventing that with the Essence Slam. We're not getting life through here, but in case that we actually naturally roll it, it has to be above item level 44, which it is going to be. If we're wanting to potentially hit tier 1 attributes, it has to be above 82, and if we want to hit potentially tier 1 resistances, it has to be at least above 84 for the elemental ones, 81 for the chaos. All right. Pretty certain. Now we know we're going to use an unveil in this process. An unveil mods are typically always 60 when it comes down to item level. So now we know that for a pretty good version of the ring, we're going to need item level 84 because I want to try to hit not just an attribute perhaps, or instead a good tier 1 resistance if we're lucky. Now, this one doesn't have, as you can see, any kind of fracture. We can fake it here in Craft of Exile by just slamming the tier 1 recoup on it. It happens to be 15%, which is what you would want in a perfect world, because 15 scales better with the catalyst, which is also what you're going to do right now. Before you craft, you're going to get yourself a bunch of catalysts, because right now it only takes 10 fertiles. On a rare, it would take 20. So you would be off twice as expensive. Now, if you are crafting on a ring that is not fractured, you can do it when it's still a normal item, and it only takes 4 to max it out, which is very, very useful. But this is the starting process. Maybe you can even do a little bit of blessing orbs to get the implicit to 30, but that's just the cherry on the top, and most people don't even do that until they're very much done with the craft, because a 1 in 10 apparently is just terribly difficult to hit. Oh my god. Oh, no, there it was. Okay, there you go. It only took 26 blessed orbs to do that. So we can already tell the RNG is totally in our favor, and this is not going to be pain. Now, what is the thing we're trying to do right now? Well, we're going to slam with essences. We can't slam essences until it's rare, so we're just going to quickly do a regal, and then we're going to open up essences. Now, we're going to slam the cast speed essence, which is Zeal, increased cast speed. Now, for the max value, you want to have tier 1 deafening. I guess you could do tier 2. It's a little less because it only goes to 13 to 14, but it's a lot cheaper. And tier 1 goes from 15 to 16. You don't miss a whole lot of cast speed, and it's going to be much, much cheaper. So if you're really on a tight budget, you want to use tier 2. Tier 1, on the other hand, is the dream. And honestly, this is going to be your life for a while until you hit a tier 1 mod you want. We have increased rarity of items found. That could be a really good mod. But perhaps you're desperately for attributes, or you're desperate for certain resistances to help you cap. Ooh, tier 2 chaos. Not bad. You could stop right here. 30% chaos resistant or 30 chaos resistance is pretty good. But let's go for a tier 1. I saw a tier 2 dex, tier 1 dexterity. Now, our build has an abundance of dexterity, but perhaps you're playing an occultist version, and, well, dexterity might be necessary, as you're more in the intellect-based area of the passive tree as opposed to what we are. But let's move on. Tier 4 strength, not quite. But as you can see, this method hits quite frequently something useful. Tier 6 strength, I guess it heard me speak positively, and it's trying to prove me wrong right now. Lightning resistance tier 1, which is great because you can always harvest craft this to a resistance that you want, which is very lovely. So here we have wonderful suffixes, and we have an open prefix. If you don't have an open prefix, you're going to have to do an annul, which is a 50-50 to have an open prefix then. But yes, we have an open prefix. All that we want to do right now is we go to the craft section, the bench craft. We'll go to prefixes. We'll go to suffixes cannot be changed. Very lovely. Then we slam the veiled chaos. As you can see, this is very often the position that you are in. Sometimes you have one prefix, but this is pretty clean. All we do now is go back to prefix crafts, and we craft mana on it. The reason for that is it helps us be slightly more likely to hit the unveil of life, which is what we're looking for. Doesn't matter how big or how little the mana is, it just has to have the mana mod. Then we unveil this, and look at that. We get the maximum life, regen mana per second as well. Now we can actually remove the mana craft, and then we have 2 options. We can just slam an exalt, a Hail Mary if you will, or we can just leave it as is, keep it open. It doesn't really matter too much, because the only thing you have to do that is left on the bench craft is the mana craft. Let's see, total non-channeling skills have a total mana cost. You want to get the -7, which gets upgraded to -8 as a result of the catalyst, and there you have it. That's it. That's all it took. A wonderful ring ready for pretty much any content. I have done every Uber boss pretty much that I'm able to on this ring, with 2 of these rings, in fact. So you can totally do this, and it took me maybe less than a divine to craft. It really depends on how good of a base you can find. And you can repeat this step for the second ring, and you can have 2 wonderful, powerful rings able to do all content with. Small warning up ahead. Do not craft these rings unless you have abundances of currency coming in and your character already functions. This is one of those crafts that requires a particular level of RNG, which sometimes for some people is instant and other people will never see it. Now, I have been able to kind of determine that I see about a good mod once every 50 to 100 clicks, which is quite pricey. So be wary of your own stash tabs running empty and dry moving forward. So you start off with a Vermilion base of item level 84, not 85 or higher, lest you would introduce another small mod into the pool you do not want to hit with a slam. But yes, an 84 Vermilion ring will do the trick. You start off with the catalysts, as always, fertile. Because it's a normal item, it only takes 4. And then the madness begins. You go and get your Zeal Essence of Deafening, and you start slamming. We're looking for a natural tier 1 recoup. That was tier 4. And this could take a while. Sometimes I hit multiple recoups in like a single stack or two. And other times it takes me over 200 to 300 clicks to even see a single recoup. Oh, this would have been lovely if that was tier 1. Because this is the problem. You have to hit not only the perfect tier 1 recoup suffix, but then also an additional one on top of that. Now, I've seen a lot of tier 1 recoups go by me because the suffix that followed it was less than stellar, too low of a roll, or completely useless. So if you're willing to settle for things that are perhaps less than stellar, you are going to save a lot of money. But if you are crafting this particular ring at this point already, you are either insane, in which case reason has left the building regardless, or you are looking to make perfection so you won't settle for anything less than stellar anyway. Now we have another recoup here, and a tier 1 cold resistance. Took me 69 rolls. Oh, I love it so. The 69 Vermilion ring. So this is perfect. We also have an open prefix. Now we're going to do the exact same thing as we did with the coral ring. We're going to craft a prefix on it that allows us to lock in the suffixes. Now we have not gotten tier 1 life on it or anything. So we have to use this method to get decent life on it. Unless you want to burn even more, particularly currency with trying to harvest reroll life. But that's 2 divines every attempt. Good luck with that. Even I am not that rich. We're going to do the Veiled Chaos Slam. Okay, as you can see, we have 3 suffixes and a veiled prefix. This is perfect. This is exactly what you want. If you have another prefix open, you pretty much have to go again, lest you would not be able to slam the Exalt Orb we are going to need later. This is the exact position you want to be in. Now, in case you do have the prefix, you just have to go suffix again. Suffix cannot be changed on the benchcraft, and then just roll another Chaos Veiled. It's very often that this is the situation that it comes out to, so don't worry. It's very common. So once you have this, you're going to block mana with a basic benchcraft. Nothing too exciting. Let's see, where is my mana? Wait, that's a suffix. My bad. Maximum mana, tier 3. We're going to unveil the prefix. We have the life. That's what we're looking for. If you don't hit the life, you have to go again. But this is exactly what we want. Also a pretty decent, pretty decent roll. Above average. We take that. Max roll on the recoup. Love it. And once you have this position, the only thing you have to do is get lucky. There's no blocks that I could find for this. So you're going to get yourself a Crusader Exalt. And then you pray. In this case, we hit tier 1 recovery per second from life. Now, with this particular version of the build, we have no life leech. Other versions of the build do. So if you run life leech, this is good. This is great for you. If you do not, it's unfortunate. But this is most likely what happens. This has happened to me quite a bit of times. Spell damage has happened. This is the mod we're actually after. And I have not seen it once for real. Gain life per enemy hit with spells. As you can see, it does happen frequently. It's like a 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, but I have been unable to find perfection myself. But yeah, you slam, you hit whatever mod you have, and then you take the benchcraft, and of course you go for the mana reduction once again. Non-channeling skills have a reduced mana cost, and you slam this until you hit the expected -8, which we have here, of course. Beautiful. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Now you have yourself a Endgame Vermilion ring. And if you want to keep trying perfection to try to hit an even better suffix if you missed anything here, or indeed the perfect prefix mod for the enemy hit with spells, this is how you do it. This is it. This is the ring. I am so close. Hopefully you'll be slightly luckier than I am. And now for my final trick, the Insanity Belt. This is a crazy piece of equipment to craft because the things we want to hit, we can't quite target. So there's a little bit of blind rolling involved, but there's two ways to do that. And depending on your budget and preferences and rest of your build, you have to make your own decision. Now, I will admit, I have had easier crafts on this build. So this might be better to buy if you can grab it up for cheap. If not, you have to test your luck with some RNG. Now, if you have the 5 flask belt, of course you're going to use a Stygian Vice. If you are using a 4 flask build, then you want to use the Micro-Distillery belt. And so we'll use that, but the same crafting method works on exactly the both of these belts, so don't worry about that. Now, the only thing that we need to be concerned about is that there's 2 mods we can hit that we want. We want increased flask charges gained or reduced flask charges used. Reduced flask charges used is slightly better for this build due to the dying sun and the way that scales. However, if you don't use a dying sun, or you have a good relic, or you have more flask effect on the passive tree, it really doesn't matter. It's almost the same thing. It's just that the reduced flask effect is slightly better. But not having either is worse than having one or the other. So let's actually get the Fertile going. Make sure you do that. Also make sure it's not influenced. Sometimes people try to sell cheap Micro-Distillery belt or even Stygian belts that are already influenced. Make sure it isn't, because we are going to use a Hunter Exalt at the end. So make sure it is not influenced. At this point, once you have this 84, you have your Fertiles on, you have 2 options. Either you can just do the simple way. Because the mod we want doesn't have anything to target, we can just roll naturally into it with Chaos Orbs. Flask charges reduced. Lightning resist enemy stun threshold. Yeah, could be usable, depending on the rest of your build, because this is the only mod we care about. It is low rolled, but it is what it is. That's kind of how I did it, and I happened to roll into a tier 2 cold and a tier 2 fire. I got very lucky with that. Just blind chaos rolling. I was kind of testing something, and I happened to hit that. Now, you also have flash charges gained, which is slightly less good. Slightly. But still very wonderfully and capable of keeping your flasks active. Depending on how your build functions and depending on what brutal restrained you have, importantly enough. Flask effect duration is the mod we do not want. Increased flask charges gained, not tier 1. Yeah, the only thing we're looking for is one of those particular flask mods, tier 1. Oh, look at that. We have a tier 5 strength, a tier 7 cold resist, but a tier 1 flask charges used. So we see the mod again. Like, it shows up quite frequently, right? So it's not that terrible to hit. Especially not since we only used 28 chaos to attempt to roll it. So you can push it far, far further and actually hit something good. Or you can guarantee a good roll. Now, which one you want depends entirely on what perhaps is budget or what is available. Because you could go for strength. If you don't need anything, strength is probably your best bet, because strength actually gives you more health and makes it able to facilitate better crafting of the helm, maybe, that I'm looking into. Otherwise, cold resistance is a pretty decent one. I mean, if you're really rich, you could theoretically try to use Insanity, but that seems like, well, insanity. Yet, as you can see here, we actually hit the suffix movement speed during any flask effect, reduced flask charges used, and then also a good usable lightning resistance. I can't believe that. So yes, sometimes you get lucky. Otherwise, just use whatever essence you want that gives you something that you desire. But the more, of course, you use, the more expensive it becomes, because these guys are not cheap. And even just a rage one for tier 1 strength is like 5 chaos. So you're comparatively to just chaos rolling, it's going to end up being quite pricey. But let's just craft on this one. So we have usable suffixes. We have the reduced flask charges used. We're going to have to divine this later. That is the regrettable thing. But it is what it is. We have the mod. That's the most important first step. And once we have the mod, we craft on the prefix for suffixes cannot be changed. Once we have that, we do the basic unveil, chaos slam. Okay, so now we have a problem. Because we want to do a slam, that prefix mana mod ruins my life. So we have two options, depending on how comfortable you are with RNG. You can try a null. It's a 1 in 5 to hit it. That's 20% chance, pretty decent chance. But you also have a 60% chance to possibly brick the belt. So the safe, although slightly more expensive way, is to just craft suffixes cannot be changed and go again until you have no prefixes available. You could do that. I think there might even be some beastcraft shenanigans you could do, but I am not well versed enough in that. So this is the way I have done it. It's pretty much straightforward. Can't really go wrong there. So once you have this position, you have your suffixes and your veiled prefix willing to go, you are going to block with chance for flasks to not use consume charges. That's the one you want to slam to block with. Then you unveil for reduced flask charges gained and increased effect. That's the one you're after. Okay, so now we're almost done. We have the wonderful prefixes. We have a crafted prefix. We keep this one because this also blocks the hunter slam, if I am not mistaken. So you get yourself a hunter modifier, yeah, and chance a rare item with a new hunter modifier, and then you slam that and hope for the best. We got tier 1 chaos damage, which is the exact same mod that I have on my current belt. But you could also hit maximum hunter life. This is the perfect one for tier 1. If you hit that tier 1, you are very happy. Increased maximum life. Look at that. Yep, you could potentially also hit a tier 1 hunter percentage life. And then the only thing you have to do is craft life on it. Just gently craft some tier 1 life on it, or tier 1 benchcraft life on it, Make sure you try to max this out. Could take a couple of tries. But at least you can just roll this on the benchcraft. Nothing fancy about it. I can't seem to get above 64 because life is there it is, 66, and then you have your belt done. And as far as cost went, look at that, 182 chaos total cost to hit good mods, as well as finishing the craft off and go from there. That is not bad. That is not bad. Of course, we have to account for the divine crafts as well. Be wary of that. So suffixes cannot be changed. Suffixes cannot be changed. We have to use that too. So it's 4 divines. So let's say 5 divines. Let's call it 5 divines for a belt that is pretty much end game ready and then some. Incredible, isn't it? So thank you all so much for watching. I hope these crafts helped you out. Any questions? Put them in the comment, or in the comment section, I mean. Or join our Discord. We have a specific Path of Exile channel. People can help you out there if they feel so inclined. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck. May your RNG be gentle. And definitely make sure to put a ring on it. I'm out.